more stories, but I know we are running short of time, so I will pause there.
Yes, thank you so much. Those are excellent. Next, we have Kim Hewlett, who's the founder and CEO of Next Biosciences. Thank you, Kim.
I feel like can I stand?
You may stand. You can stand here if you'd like.
Much better, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. So even though we started Next Biosciences over 17 years ago, I very much still regard it as a startup because every day there are new challenges and opportunities. So very quickly, these are our various divisions. We do biobanking, cryogenic storage of stem cells and other biological products, testing from reproductive genetic testing to COVID testing and microbiome testing, and even the manufacture of biological products from the placenta. So life as an entrepreneur, as you know, is exhilarating. It's full of ups and downs. It's a roller coaster, actually, of extreme opposites. And in the end, it really is all about to achieve balance. And balance can sometimes be elusive. And you've all heard the saying, too much of a good thing is generally a bad thing, because once you meet a state of disequilibrium, that's when the wheels start rattling and wobbling, and they really come off, and that's where the real war stories start. So I'm going to just touch on a few very quickly here. We go from innovation to regulation. And as a young budding entrepreneur, you go out into the world, the stars in your eyes, you think you're going to achieve the impossible, anything's possible. And then lo and behold, you discover regulations. And they just come and they just throw you right off your track, and you realize the power they have to disrupt you and your plans. And regulations are there for a reason, and often they lag. We know they lag innovation. So my advice to you is make sure you understand the regulations and you don't get caught by them. For instance, when I started off, I came from a computer science background and I had accounting. I had no idea that it was unethical to market medical testing services. I mean, what do you mean? And then I realized, actually, well, you can't really try to force someone to take a medical test that they don't need. That too, you can't employ doctors, you can't bill for medical tests unless you're registered with the HPC. And then let's get to import-export permits. You know, marketing, getting stem cells coming into the country. And you know these damn babies, hey? They never come when they're supposed to. Their stem cells arrive in the country and there's no import permit. And you can imagine the rabbits we have to pull out of a hat to get those stem cells released so they can be banked before they become biologically not viable. And even to when we were manufacturing and getting some amazing products out the placenta, and some of the first in the world, we were so excited. We got some sales contracts in Canada, the US, and UK, only to find out that we couldn't get an export permit. And why? Because the regulators didn't understand our product and how they could classify it. And that put an end to that. Then we go from competition to collaboration. And as South Africans, I really believe we have got some of the most entrepreneurial people on the planet. We think about it, we have to contend with 11 different languages. We are very culturally diverse, and we are a melting pot of creative ideas. It's really an exciting place to be, and it means we have to hustle harder and we compete more, and often you cannot survive just with one product. You have to have many products. And so we're all competing in the market. And instead of looking at each other and our other African counterparts to say, hold on, guys, where can we collaborate? And where can we achieve economies of scale and increase our capacity? Because before we know it, the international guys come in and they eat our lunch. They undercut all our pricing, and this actually happened. And one of the international genetics companies came into the country, not just undercut our price, they actually offered the test at a lower price than we could get our reagents for. But luckily for us, COVID was on our side. COVID came, and they couldn't get samples out the country. So we were able to save our business there, because once that happens, you lose business. Guess what? You lose jobs, and the scientists leave the country, and no capacity in this country, as was starkly exposed during COVID. And that gives me to my last slide, which is consistency versus pivoting. And we all know consistency is key. It really is. And it takes a long slog as an entrepreneur, many nights, late nights, blood, sweat, and tears to not just get the wheel moving, but to get it actually turning and going forward. And in a moment, it can all be gone, like we saw with COVID. And you have to pivot. You have to be adaptable and agile. And we were very fortunate because we were able to pivot and within 2 weeks set up a fully validated COVID lab. And what we decided to do, we didn't want to compete with the path labs. We just do not have their scale. So we decided to focus on the sports, entertainment, and travel industry. And when international travel opened up, we were asked to set up a testing facility at Orotamba. Well, lo and behold, it wasn't that easy. We couldn't find space. There was loads of empty space in the airport, but they didn't have space for us. So we managed to negotiate a deal with a hotel across the road as a conferencing deal. So it was really expensive to set up like a conferencing venue. We were able to set up a lab and managed to test all the transit passengers. And the next thing, one of the world's largest airlines just announced, without telling us, that we were their preferred partner for testing. And everyone getting on the flight had to come for us at a test at the airport within 4 hours before they departed. Well, it was mayhem. If you ever thought you wanted a lot of business, I promise you, this was not a time. It was crazy because the plane couldn't take off unless everyone was tested, and then you get false positives, and oh my God. And then they said to us, be ready for December. We are bringing on more Airbuses. There's more people traveling. So we thought, sure, we better invest, and we invested millions in buying more gene experts. We could get fast turnaround times and stockpiling the reagents. And guess what? Omicron hit. And we didn't even get to unpack the gene experts. They're still sitting in their box. But just as quickly, what I'm trying to say is, as you have to pivot and accelerate your business as fast, we've had to decelerate even faster. But that's what makes life exciting. And I must be honest, I'm really happy COVID is over. Well, so we like to believe, we like to think it's gone. But without that, we wouldn't be here today, and thank goodness for that. We can all be here. Thanks.
Thank you so much. In our workshop, as we did a weekend workshop and talked about successful entrepreneurship, and one of the things is enthusiasm, projection. So we just got a first class in model of that. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next, we'll have Daniel and Dima. If you'd like to come up and talk about Cape Bio.
Thank you, Dick, for the, is it Derek, right? Sure. Derek, for the opportunity. Thank you to the audience. My job is a bit difficult because I just spoke after a firebrand. And I'm intimidated. However, I'll start with my presentation. I'm a CEO and a founder of Cape Bio. And we are a biotechnology company. And our research and development focuses on leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, bioinformatics, the convergence of these two fields to rationalize our big data genomics, which we mine from the Cape Biosphere, the world's second richest biodiversity hotspot. That's our territory. And we're going to fight because this is trading wars. We are competing quite well for those resources, but we find a way of leveraging them uniquely. So we are developing this unique portfolio of IP. We focus mostly on diagnostics. So we manufacture. We don't just do research, we also manufacture and trade. And what we want to diagnose, we also want to build a therapeutic portfolio. So we test and we provide therapeutics. That's the motto of our business. Before COVID, we were exporting, these reagents, which were not necessarily diagnostics, to the likes of US. We've got partners there, Canada and India. And when COVID hit, we also had to pivot. And as at times government says, we are struggling. I think we heard that we were at the back of the queue. So we're one of those people that were called upon to use our expertise and competencies to respond to the challenge that we had, which was a shortage around diagnostics. So we developed a PCR for COVID, which is approved by SAPRA, and it is loved on the continent because it's a local product and probably the only product on the continent that is made in the continent. Everything else is an import. And Kim speaks about some of these machines that I hate so much. The closed systems, the Gene Expert, those are the people that take the market out of our hands. Because we can't develop machines, we can develop reagents and diagnostics. So we are expanding our portfolio. Just quickly to take you through, this is, I think I'm going to be chatting a lot with the guys that are in the startup stadium, because I'm still a youth, so I have that advantage of sitting with the elders and also the younger people. So that's a privilege of being young. So in essence, what I'm trying to portray here is that, as an entrepreneur, the journey starts, very differently, and I always say there's a difference between an entrepreneur and a business person. Those are two different people. An entrepreneur has to have all those skills, or at least have an understanding of those skills. Because when you run a startup, right, people say, no, but you can outsource. But no one will run the business the way you want to run, because it's your idea. So you have to understand, how to develop it. You have to understand your technology. You have to understand the techno-economics out of that, the finance, at basic level. And you have to be a platform engineer and understand so that you are able to direct or recruit your colleagues that are able to then build on that. That's how you share the vision as a leader of a startup. So the challenge that you always have in South Africa is that once you have, these ideas, that whether they're brilliant or not, I think someone was talking about that as a question from the previous session, it doesn't matter. You need to understand your business. One of the reasons why a lot of businesses are failing is because we want to focus on what we know. And you will never get funding for you to be able to recruit these people as a startup. So as a startup, this is where the first challenge that you're going to face. And I always say that this is my key points, and I'm going to read them one by one. And this is sort of how I approach business. Don't follow the noise in the market. Take your time. Solid ideation phase is very important. And in South Africa, everyone wants to make money tomorrow or in the next hour. Unfortunately, if you do that, and if you've seen during COVID, those that took opportunities from us, the overnight BE tender, the engineers, some of them are cleaning companies, they went to block us for some reason, I don't know. They rush, but tomorrow there's nothing. And those people don't create jobs, 2 people, directors, they have no office. We hire people, and yet we don't get a business from our own government. And multinationals, which I have no problem with them, they are good partners, they are good collaborators, are more preferred than the local technologies. But take your time. Ideation phase is important because that's what will set you up proper. If you have solid grounding, solid foundation in business, you're gonna maneuver, you're gonna outmaneuver them. And secondly, get the market, because even I think Kim was speaking about it. We tend to want to service everyone. No, get a sizable market and serve them well, serve them properly, build capacity from your experience. Don't rush to serve everyone. Choose wisely. But I'm not going to focus too much because this is a warm-up. Most of the startup, they fall, before even they cross the chasm. And this is how startups fail. They will get innovators that support them. Then they will get early adopters, and it ends there. Then they will hire probably a maximum of 10 people. After that, they're gone. To go to the bigger piece, that is more like reserve. That's what I was saying, that even our colleagues, our friends from overseas, they are well advantaged than we are. Our product is sold in the US, packaged in the US. It comes to compete with us. Value has skyrocketed, but those people will be given a deal. That's the reality of startups in South Africa. Something is fundamentally wrong. And I'm sure even on the continent is the same. So where we want to be is this side. Companies like Kim's company who are now growing, we want to get into their business. We need to support each other so that we can grow this economy, so that we can create these jobs. But the big fight is here. This is what I call top-down competition and bottom-up competition. And this is what happens. The reason why we are outclassed, because the governments from overseas, they really advocate for their businesses. They don't play around. I don't know if they advocate for their technology. They speak good about their technologies, and they've got a very good sense of understanding, diplomatic nature in business in general. And they are able to carry these businesses into these different territories and advocate for them. And they get mega deals in advance before they even do anything. And they close these systems that I'm talking about, Kim. They make sure no one comes, and that's their constituency. And this is good. There's nothing wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But what we need is a consolidated effort where we're saying it doesn't matter whether it's top-down competition or bottom-up competition, where a multinational will come and say, I want skillful people, then I set up a visual office, then the headquarters, you report that site. And 5 people only in the office. And then you hire 20, 50 people. You compete for a tender. They get a tender. You don't. Why? Because they have crown influence. They can outmaneuver. They've got better regulations, and they understand the industry. They are well matured in terms of the industries. And they are able to lock and dominate. They can lock you out of the market completely and shut you down. And they are good at that. So in the biotech space, it's cutthroat industry. You rise or you fall. If your people are not supporting you, you're gonna fall, and all those jobs that you are creating or that you are willing to create are going to go away, and we're gonna go back in a cycle of unemployment, unequal, load shedding, and all those things because we don't support local technologies. We have to be intentional if we are about to be taken serious in the world. Thank you very much.
Another very passionate entrepreneur, which I very much appreciate. And lastly, we have Robert Karanha with Philgro. And if you could keep it,
super short.
we have time for a couple questions.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, let me first start by saying that's now very intimidating too. So thank you. So my background, I'm a biomedical scientist. I've spent 15 years in my research career at the Kenya Medical Research Institute. And during most of that time, I was trying to figure out 2 things. Of course, I had my own publications or publish or perish, but then the second part of it was trying to understand how do we solve these problems for real? I actually was very ambitious as a younger guy. I thought I'm going to get the Nobel Prize for malaria because I couldn't understand why the hell do we die from malaria, And truth be told, after doing some constructive thinking, I realized it's not so much a scientific issue, it's really just an economics issue. And so I needed to understand how do we get the science and the business and the economics to actually work together. And that set me up on a road of trying to understand how do we become better at innovating, how do we become better at solving some of the challenges that you're talking about. And my first step was actually to set up a bioentrepreneurship program at one of our universities. I went to the business school, told them, hey, my name is Robert, I'm a scientist, and I'm here to talk business, and you're going to do this stuff with me. And they kind of obliged me, and I'm glad, because somehow or other we got a program up and running. And I started reaching out to scientists, saying, come, let's learn about this, let's talk, let's understand how do we narrow that gap between how much do we know and what do we really do with it. It looked like I was succeeding, but then the second issue was nobody was actually putting it into practice. So it was really just head knowledge, which does not do you any good. So the second question was, how do you actually facilitate that? And I realized we need hand-holding. Sometimes we are not very confident when we move out of our area of expertise, especially if it's a PhD, took I don't know how many years. And so we set up, I started thinking we need to get an incubator. And I was very fortunate that as I was working around with the concept of what I thought my incubator ought to look like, I was approached by a team from Vilgro, and Vilgro is one of the oldest, probably, impact incubators globally. We're about 21 years old now, worked in India for, those 20 plus years. And being able to especially work with inventors and helping them to take the innovations to the market, primarily the focus on the rural economy. And so I thought this is a great model. Actually, we should probably take it and bring it into Africa, understand how do we roll it out. And so that became my next phase. So the last 7 years, I've actually been working as a co-founder of Vilgro, started off as a CEO. I dropped that title at 2020, partly because I realized somebody could do it better than me. That was my co-founder. So I quickly told him, run with this. But that allowed me to focus on a few other things, which is a lot of it is ecosystem building. Because some of the challenges we face, regulatory is one. one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur and dealing with regulators is they do not want to have a conflict of interest. They don't want to engage you directly. So I step in and I say, hey, let's talk about this. I don't have any skin in the game. So what exactly is the issue? And in most cases, the issue is that there's really no regulatory pathway. Most of our regulators just rubber stamp. And so we're able to start that conversation and start saying, how do we actually build a roadmap for local innovations? Second thing is also being able to understand how do we fund startups? Because I know we were saying earlier that what you really need the most is more than money is the technical expertise. But reality is nobody comes to me for technical expertise. They all come to me for money. So I needed to figure out how do I get money. and I was very fortunate in terms of being able to engage with those who are already funding us in India and inviting them to come and take a risk on me because at least they knew the model. And then grow that family of funders. And these are basically family offices from the US, from Europe, and even DFIs, USAID, for example, IDRC from Canada. So they've been providing capital for me to dish out and allowing me to actually do it as philanthropic venture capital, which means I can give you a grant to start off with and de-risk it to a point where we think now we can actually be able to deploy more capital as return-seeking capital, typically equity or convertible notes or something. And so that has actually been amazing in terms of doing two things, giving me greater pipeline in terms of the innovators, entrepreneurs that I meet, and also being able to actually get the wheels moving because it really takes money to make money. The second thing is being able to be very catalytic in the way we deploy it so that as we do so, the first thing I learned is why should somebody else come on board? Why should you come in and fund, invest with me or after me? And so being able to start mapping out what I call the funding value chain or the capital value chain and trying to understand what is the mindset of those investors further downstream. And then being able to take those learnings and we literally co-create our incubation program with investors so that we set targets and milestones that drive towards what will be eligible, what will make our entrepreneurs eligible for them in the investment committee. And that has led us to a lot of much bigger success. I think today, as we start as Will Grow Africa, we've supported about 40 or so startups across East Africa. We've done about $1.8 million in seed capital, pre-seed and seed capital. But that has been able to attract more than $18 million in follow-on investment. We've created more than 234 jobs last time we counted. We come in literally always pre-revenue and seen our companies generate more than $2 million in new revenues. So all I want to say is very simple. What we do as scientists is valuable, but you also do need to work with incubators, with accelerators, with the enterprise support organizations. It's a lot to be able to figure out how to do alone. Of course, you will do it. I know everybody's smart. I know they're going to do it. But my argument is very simple. We actually consolidate a lot of knowledge within these innovation hubs and maker spaces, whatever the hell you want to call them, that you can actually leverage to shorten that learning curve and to make it much smoother. And I just want to encourage everybody to look at two sources of support. One is AfriLabs, which is a platform that I think we've been registering more than 200 or so incubators, accelerators across the continent, including in Southern Africa. The other one is ANDI, the Aspen Network for Development Entrepreneurs. And we have a South African chapter that, again, is also very active. And both of them will bring not just the technical expertise. We are partnering with people like the Africa Business Angels Network, ABAN. We have a catalytic fund out there that allows us to leverage each other. We work with investors also very closely. We also work very closely with the DFIs. And the question is being able to put your case forward to the people that it actually will make a difference. So being part of those communities is really valid. And the reason I say that is because every year I measure how are we doing in the life sciences, how are we doing as a bioeconomy versus tech, because as you heard earlier, we are really dominated by tech in Kenya. Last year was the first time we did about $5 billion in venture capital investment across the continent. And for the first time, health sector was number 2. And that was 10% of that $5 billion. So you tell me, how do we make our business case? How do we become competitive as a sector We do need the cooperation. We do need to collaborate. We do need to educate our governments. It's a triple helix discussion. Ours is not tech. Our barriers of entry are so much higher. The capital expenditure the capex is so much higher. And we need to be able to understand how to speak the language of policymakers, the regulators, the investors, and of course the customer. And out of all of those, don't forget the hidden customer is actually the investor, because you're going to be pre-revenue for some time, typically, for half of the stuff that you guys are talking about. So these investors need to understand, why should I wait for that 10 years before you become revenue? So I'll stop there and say it's a great journey, those are some of the tactics that we've used to be able to bring private capital into the game. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry to have to push you forward. Everybody's got so much to share. I will say we ran AHIA ran a weekend workshop on the business essentials of really taking an idea from idea to commercialization, and we had a great discussion at the end of the weekend, and asked them sort of what are the priorities. And one of them is, and we're going to talk to you, because one of them that we've identified is they know there's incubators and accelerators. You know, which one to apply to and how to apply. What do they need to do to really have those check boxes checked to be ready for an application and ready to take advantage of a program like your own? So we'll have discussion about that. I'm just going to go straight to questions. If there's a couple of questions in the audience, and then we'll wrap it up so you can get to lunch. Any questions for the panel? They really want lunch. Oh, yes. There's one question there. Yes. I don't know. You should probably stand forward.
PhD student there. So, what's exciting is the information that we have been given today, and some of the challenges brought by the coronavirus is the transition to online platforms like Zoom and Teams, which has affected a lot of businesses where at first it was difficult to create that transition and to use such platforms to advance our businesses. So the coronavirus has really affected and our businesses. And I'd like to appreciate the challenges that we have had today. I think they've assisted each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that comment. Do we have any other questions for the panel? Yes, sir.
Hello. My name is Molati Nunyane, and I work for the Africa Center for Gene Technologies. We mostly work with people in academia and basic research. And the biggest struggle now is how do we get to a point of translational research where the basic research actually translates and connects with what you guys are trying to achieve at the moment. And you mentioned that there's a lot of people who believe in their ideas, but they're gone within 2 days or however long. So what happens is we're trying to make the connection, but when you say go buy your products, 1 million searches come back, so we don't know who's real and who's not. And sometimes people that come, they genuinely believe in the idea, but they don't have anything to offer at the moment. What advice could you give the basic scientist who wants to make that connection and how to navigate that space? What are the red flags, if you will? Thank you.
Who would like to take a stab at that? Daniel? Yes.
Yeah, I see that he's looking at me. I also want to say, yeah. So I think we have to introduce bioentrepreneurship to scientists, and I think that entrepreneurial training has to start from high school. I just think that it has to be part of the education system. It doesn't matter what you do later, but just to have an element, because what sparks that entrepreneurial flair, you will never know It may be a trip to Kruger National Park. It may be you fall, and next thing, it's all about inefficiencies. The more problems we have, the more business we have. That's sort of how I think. If there are problems, it means there are business opportunities. Inefficiencies are opportunities. But I would like to say, in terms of addressing that question quickly, my way of thinking is always to say, look for those inefficiencies. That is the market. And then innovate backwards. Don't innovate thinking that you have the market. Get the market, understand it, and then start having building blocks. Lead into the market, but you are going backwards towards the ideation. So your ideation will be well informed because you're well informed in terms of the entire value chain. So I would say they have to understand those inefficiencies, those problems that they need to solve first, and then work backwards towards the laboratory. And then it's going to be very easy because everything would have been packaged, together. So it's just steps for you basically to go and service that particular market. I hope that answers you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's thank you for that. And I'll just say that it's a great point, thinking about the market and sort of what problems you're solving. People often use Uber as an example of here's this totally new innovation, and so they had to build the market. Well, the market was there. The market was people who needed a ride quicker and more efficiently than the currently available option, right? So that's that. It's not that super complicated if you think about that. And then they also were smart enough to say, in addition to that, there are a lot of people that need what? That need part-time jobs. They'll be our drivers. And they put the two things together, and now we have Uber, which has changed the world. So I think sometimes innovators, at least in my classes and things, they think they have to come up with the next Apple iPhone or the next rocket ship that Elon Musk, they keep reading about. But there's so many business opportunities where there's just these inefficiencies, and you can do some things and really make a great business around them. So I'll end with that. I want to thank the panel. Excellent job, and I'll release you to lunch, and we'll have some. I'm sure the panelists will be around to answer additional questions. Thank you.